Little People and the Pedro Mountain Mummy. Oral traditions of many Native American tribes tell of little people who stand just about 20 inches to 3 feet tall. In some tribes, they are known as tiny people eaters. In others, they are known to be spirits and healers, and some believe them to be magical, similar to leprechauns and fairies. In any event, the legends were well known among Indians across the nation, long before the Europeans set foot on these lands. To the Indians of Wyoming, this small race of people are known as the Nimeragar, and their legends told of the little people attacking them with tiny bows and poisoned arrows. They were also known to kill their own kind with a blow to the head when they became too ill to be an active part of their society. Though part of the legend, this practice of sometimes killing the infirmed was also a very regular part for many of the nomadic Indian tribes. Many believe these little people to be only the stuff of legends. Several discoveries point to the contrary, the most significant of which was a 14-inch fully formed mummy found in 1932. Called the Pedro Mountain Mummy, he was discovered when two men were digging for gold in San Pedro Mountains, about 60 miles southwest of Casper, Wyoming. After continually working a rich vein and running only into more and more rock, Cecil Main and Frank Carr used dynamite to blast a section of the mountain to get to the gold. After the dust cleared, a cave could be seen in the rock face. The small cavern was about 15 feet long and 4 feet wide. The small cavern was about 15 feet long and 4 feet high, and had been totally sealed off from the outside by a thick wall of rock. As the men entered the cave, they were surprised to see a small pygmy-like man sitting cross-legged upon a ledge. The tiny mummy was only about 6.5 inches tall, and its seated position, and an estimated 14 inches tall in standing position. Its skin was brown and wrinkled, its forehead low and flat, its features displaying a flat nose, heavy-lidded eyes, and a very wide mouth with very thin lips. The face looked like an old man. It was so well preserved its fingernails could still be on its hands, and the top of its head was still covered in a dark jelly-like substance that was still palatable. The two prospectors took their find to Casper, Wyoming, and in no time, scientists came from all over the nation just to get a glimpse of the mummy. Sure that it was a hoax, extensive testing was done. And when professionals assumed it was a pieced-together work of taxidermy, an anthropologist soon revealed that X-rays displayed a perfectly formed, male-like skeleton. The test also showed that the mummy had been killed violently, as the spine was damaged, a collarbone broken, and the skull been smashed by a heavy blow. The soft substance at the top of the head exposed brain tissue and coagulated blood. After the tests were complete, the scientists estimated that the mummy was a fully grown adult who was approximately 65 years old at the time of his death. One odd finding was that the teeth were overly pointed, having a full set of canines. These examinations were allegedly performed by the American Museum of Natural History and certified genuine by the Anthropology Department of Harvard University. However, alternate reports also say that the mummy was explained by the University of Wyoming. The body was found to be that of a deceased child. The mummy was displayed in sideshows for years before it was purchased by a Casper businessman named Ivan T. Goodman When Goodman died in 1950, the mummy passed into the hands of one Leonard Walder, a New York businessman who then died in 1980. It has not been seen publicly since, and its whereabouts are completely unknown. Other skeletons of the little people have been said to have been found in other areas of the U.S., near Ohio. A burial ground was reportedly discovered and contained the numerous remains of pygmy races, and people that were only about 3 feet tall. In 1876, another ancient graveyard was documented as being discovered in Coffee County, Tennessee. The reports indicated the cemetery, covering some 6 acres, held the remains of thousands of dwarf-like people. Though the little mummy has been lost in history, it continues to be a scientific curiosity to many, and others only stuff of legends. Allegedly, the Pedro Mountain mummy brought bad luck to those who possessed it, and Native Americans continue to warn their people to be wary of the tiny people eaters, who are still said to live in the mountains and high places of Wyoming. As to the prospectors who originally found this mummy, they soon returned to continue their search for gold. They registered their claim in Carbon County as the Little Man Mine, but it never produced the gold that they had hoped for. Today, a sign still stands in Shirley Basin that signifies the location of the mine. Big Nose George. Criminal George Parrott, known by a host of aliases including Big Nose George, is not only infamous for being hanged as an outlaw, but also for what happened to his body afterwards. A member of an outlaw group that robbed traveling wagons and shipments, Parrott eventually separated from the group after their trouble began to catch up with them, causing the band of thieves to disperse. Openly bragging of his crimes, including murder, in a Montana bar led to his capture and return to Wyoming to stand trial. After a failed prison escape, he was finally killed by an angry vigilante mob of about 200 people. After his death, doctors Thomas McGee and John Osborne took his body to study his brain, and to see if they could find the difference between Parrott's criminal brain and a regular brain. They found nothing, and then subjected the body to a series of bizarre atrocities. A death mask was made of his face, and the Osbornes skinned his chest and sent the skin to a tannery with instructions for it to be made into a medicine bag and shoes. His skull cap was also used as an ashtray. They kept the rest of his dismembered body preserved in a whiskey barrel for over a year while Osborne continued to conduct bizarre experiments on it. This all was forgotten about until 1950, when the barrel full of Parrott's bones were discovered buried behind what used to be the doctor's office. Jackalopes. Whether the jackalope actually exists or is simply a hoax popularized by a Douglas, Wyoming resident in 1939, it's still hotly debated today. For those who believe, the jackalope is said to be an antlered species of rabbit, sometimes rumored to be extinct. One of the rarest animals in the world, it is a cross between a now extinct pygmy deer and a species of killer rabbit. However, occasional sightings of this rare creature continue to occur, with small pockets of jackalope populations persisting in the American West. The antlered species of rabbit are brownish in color, weigh between 3 and 5 pounds, and move at a lightning speed of up to 90 miles per hour. They are said to be vicious when they attack and use their antlers to fight. Thus, they are sometimes called the warrior rabbit. Some people do not believe a species ever existed. but rather that the jackalope is real only because of the virus called papillomatosis, also called jackalopism. The disease causes certain growth caused by a parasite to harden on top of a rabbit's head, resembling horns. It's a virus that they attribute to the birth of the jackalope legend. For others, the jackalope is thought to be nothing more than a whimsical creature. Perpetrated by Douglas Herrick, a resident of Douglas, Wyoming, in 1939. The whole thing began after Douglas and his brother Ralph had returned from hunting one day. When Ralph threw a dead jackrabbit on the floor of the shop, it slid right up against the pair of deer horns. When Ralph declared that it looked like a rabbit with horns on it, Douglas, a taxidermist, decided to mount it. From then, the mounted jackalope was born, and the pair of brothers began to sell them to the public. Before long, they could be found everywhere, in homes and taverns all over the American West. Each year, the Douglas Chamber of Commerce also issues thousands of jackalope hunting licenses, despite rules saying that the hunter cannot have an IQ higher than 72 and can only hunt between midnight and 2 a.m. each June 31st. Gebo. There are abandoned towns in Wyoming that are fun to explore, and then there are abandoned towns that leave you feeling uneasy. Once a town so full of life is now a place where people no longer even want to visit. Gebo is a town located in the northern central part of the state. It's a ghost town located in the Hot Springs County just north of Thermopolis. The town was established as a coal town in 1907 and named after Samuel Gebo, who immigrated to America from Canada. Gebo founded the Owl Creek Coal Company and the first mine in the area. The town remained an active mining town until about 1938. Once a thriving town of over 20,000 people, today the town is completely abandoned, with only remnants of buildings still standing. At its height, Gebo was the largest town in Hot Springs County. The remains of the town were bulldozed in 1971, and only the cemetery is left intact. Sadly, most of the graves are of infants and children. People who have gone there reported hearing babies cry within the cemetery and seeing ghostly figures of children wandering, sometimes playing peekaboo behind the gravestones. Headless Bride Ghost. Yellowstone has many ghost stories, but the most famous tale is that of a headless bride who walks down the stairs from the crow's nest in the Old Faithful Inn. The legend starts in 1915 New York. The wealthy owner of a shipping company had a teenage daughter that was a bit of a rebel. She thought of herself as a modern woman and rejected the arranged marriage to a young man from another well-to-do family. Instead, she wanted to marry a much older man who worked in their house as a servant. The father really had his daughter's best interest in mind when he tried to convince her that the servant was just a gold digger and not a loving gentleman that she thought she knew. But there was no convincing her. The young heiress and the old servant went ahead with the wedding. The father was heartbroken, but he had a plan. For a wedding gift, he gave the couple a substantial dowry. The acceptance of money came from the agreement that the daughter would not receive any additional support from her family, and that they would leave New York forever. The father was hoping that this agreement would make the servant back out of the wedding. Just knowing that he wouldn't inherit any money or get a job at the family business. However, the couple agreed and went to Yellowstone for their honeymoon, staying at the Old Faithful Inn in room 127. It was a fairly new hotel then, and having been built in 1903 to 1904, it was the place to take a fashionable vacation. It didn't take much time for the husband to show his true colors. On the way to Yellowstone, he lavishingly spent the money at taverns and playing poker. The couple had been a month into their honeymoon trip when they had ran out of money. There wasn't even enough left to pay their hotel bill. Staff at the Old Faithful Inn witnessed nightly arguments, loud enough to be heard outside of their private room. By now, the bride had realized her misjudgment, and she phoned home to her father asking for more money. The answer was no. Then one night, the argument was louder and more violent than usual. The husband stormed out of the hotel, slamming the door. This was the last anyone would see of him. The hotel staff gave the new bride her privacy for a couple of days, but they became worried and took a peek inside the room. It looked like a hurricane had thrown every bit of bedding and clothing out of the room. But the bride was not in the bedroom. A hotel maid ventured into the bathroom, and her screams brought many staff and guests to find the bride in the bathtub, bloody, and missing her head. Although they searched the hotel, her head was never found. In a couple of days, attention was directed to the highest point of the hotel, up in the crow's nest where the band played. But now the only thing that wafted to the lobby below was a horrible odor. You guessed it. Further investigation revealed that the bride's head was there. Over the years, guests have cited an apparition of a woman wearing a flowing white dress, walking down the stairs from the crow's nest, with her head under her arm. And that's it, ghouls. That's the end of our urban legend state stories. I still haven't made up my mind about what I want to do, but I am leaning more towards the creepypasta thing just because I really like to voice act kind of when I narrate. I get into the characters and it's just really fun for me. But hopefully I can find some time to maybe do urban legends in other countries as well as the state creepypasta things. I'm not sure though, especially since, my kid's going to be off for summer vacation next month, and it's going to be really hard for me to try to find time to narrate whilst I have my child running around upstairs being a crazy person. But, I'll do my best. As always, ghouls, the last video will be on the top left, the next video will be on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen, as well as in the description box below. And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.